Gospel icon Mama Mosie Burks has passed away. And what Tamela Mann just shared will absolutely leave you stunned. After spending years lifting hearts and spirits through her voice, Mosey's final days were spent in quiet heartbreak. No one called. No one visited. Not even those she once called family. Now, Tamela Mann is breaking down in tears, revealing a truth that no one saw coming. Why was Mama Mosie left all alone? What really went on behind closed doors? Stick with me, because what you're about to hear is going to rattle the gospel world to its very foundation. There are certain names in gospel music that go beyond generations, names that demand respect, love, and admiration. Mama Mosie Burks was without a doubt one of those names. Famous for being the thunderous voice behind the Mississippi Mass Choir, her vocals could shake the heavens and pierce straight through the soul. But while the world celebrated her from a distance, a quiet and painful reality was taking place behind the scenes, one even her most loyal fans didn't see coming. Now, Tamela Mann, another deeply cherished voice in gospel, is speaking up. Not with praise, but with heartbreak. In a recent emotional revelation, she opened up about Mosey's final moments and how so many in the gospel world turned their backs on her during her darkest hour. Why didn't anyone check in? How could someone adored by millions be left to fade away in isolation?
And why did Tamela herself feel so alone, ignored, and torn apart by the things she witnessed? In this video, we're uncovering the buried pain behind Mosie Burks' last days. Tamela Mann's deeply emotional outcry to the gospel world. The shocking silence from those within the gospel industry and even Mosey's own family. Unheard truths from people who saw everything happen up close. Yes, even the final words Mosie shared before her passing, words that have shaken everyone. Who's heard them? This isn't just a tribute. This is a moment of truth. So brace yourself, because what you're about to learn is raw, real, and long overdue, and trust me, this is where things get serious. Mama Mosie Burks wasn't just a voice in gospel, she was gospel royalty. Her voice, gritty, electrifying, filled with the fire of the Holy Spirit, made her the heart of the Mississippi Mass Choir. And through them, a legend in churches and communities all over. Songs like When I Rose This Morning and I'm Not Tired Yet were far more than just music. They were proclamations of faith-living testimonies carried through sound. But as time passed and younger artists took center stage, Mosie quietly stepped back. Her health declined behind the scenes, and the very industry she helped shape slowly turned down the volume on her legacy. People believed she was simply living out her retirement peacefully. What they didn't realize was that behind the scenes, Mosie was quietly enduring emotional, spiritual, and physical pain. Sources close to her family revealed that in her final months, Mosie was rarely visited, even though she had once been surrounded by pastors, choir mates, fans, and churchgoers. Now she was left in a quiet room, spending most of her time in solitude. Even her own family's visits became scarce. And the same people who once stood beside her on stage and praised seemed to vanish when she needed comfort the most. One neighbor, who wished to remain anonymous, shared with tears in their eyes, there were entire weeks where no one came by. Not a single soul. She'd just sit at her window staring out, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone she recognized. It's painful to even imagine, isn't it? A woman who gave so much of herself to others being left to feel so forgotten. This wasn't only about physical illness, it was emotional neglect, and that's exactly what shattered Tamela Mann's heart. We'll get to that, because here's where it all begins to unravel. Despite all her accolades, despite all the love and recognition, Mosie never received a major tribute while she was still here. No viral gospel movements, no widely shared fundraisers to help with her medical care or emotional well-being. Now, many fans online are asking the same painful question: where were the people she sang with, prayed with, served God with? Where was the gospel community when she needed them most? But here's the part few are willing to talk about. When news broke of Mama Mosie Burks' death, social media erupted with emotional tributes. Fans posted video clips of her legendary performances, powerful moments of worship, raw vocal emotion that moved countless hearts. But Tamela Mann remained silent. Strangely silent. And then, completely unexpectedly, during a recent gospel podcast appearance, Tamela broke down, her face soaked with tears, her voice trembling. She finally opened up. "I waited for someone else to speak on it," she said. "But no one did, so now I will." Mama Mosie didn't deserve to pass away alone, and neither did I. It wasn't just about mourning, it was about guilt, frustration, and feeling forsaken. Tamela revealed something not many were aware of. She had attempted to visit Mama Mosie several times during her final year. But according to Tamela, some family members had become distant, controlling access, and allegedly even discouraged others in the gospel circle from visiting. They kept saying she was too tired for guests, Tamela explained. But the truth? She wasn't tired of love. She was tired of being forgotten. Tamela then made a powerful and heartbreaking comparison to her own life. She shared that even after years of triumph with David Mann and working on Tyler Perry Productions, she too faced abandonment not from fans, but from those she once called her spiritual family. There were times in my life, she said, when I felt it too. Left out, invisible, overlooked by the same people I used to praise and worship with. The same ones I used to serve God alongside. And when she discovered that Mosey's someone she considered a spiritual mother, a guiding light, not only passed away, but did so feeling unwanted and unseen, it reopened emotional wounds Tamela thought she had long since healed. But Tamela didn't stop there. She went further, calling out the performative mourning that flooded social media the moment Mo's death became public. Y'all crying online, but where were y'all when she was crying, alone in that room? She asked bluntly. Sharing old videos doesn't erase what we failed to do while she was still alive and breathing. That statement hit hard. It wasn't just a criticism, it was a wake-up call. In the days after her emotional podcast appearance, Tamela's words spread like wildfire, especially among gospel and church circles. Many fans applauded her for her honesty and boldness, but not everyone responded positively. Some insiders in the gospel world claimed she was stirring division, reopening old wounds, or turning private grief into a public performance, but Tamela stood her ground. On her own page, she shared a haunting quote one she said always reminded her of Mo. People will sing your praises when you're in a casket, but ignore your cries while you're still alive. That, she said, was the very heart of her sorrow. Mosey didn't just pass away. She was already forgotten long before she drew her last breath. And now, the cracks within the gospel community had split wide open. Fans began to ask tough questions. Why wasn't there any organized effort to care for Mosey in her final chapter? Why had so many major gospel events failed to acknowledge her in recent years? And who else among gospel legends might be quietly suffering in silence right now? But here's where the story takes a darker and more painful turn. As the news of Mama Mosie Burks' death spread rapidly, tributes from around the world began pouring in. Churches hosted spontaneous praise breaks in her memory. Her legendary solos with the Mississippi Mass Choir resurfaced and began trending. Once again, but for those closest to Mosey, her passing wasn't just a loss, it was a lingering pain. A retired hospice nurse who cared for her in her final weeks speaking, anonymously out of fear of backlash, revealed there was more to Mosey's passing than anyone had publicly acknowledged. She claimed Mosey had written a deeply personal letter tucked inside her Bible, with instructions that it should only be read after her death, but only if the truth was being hidden. And the truth was being hidden. That letter, reportedly now held by a trusted spiritual confidant, hasn't been released in full, but portions of it were leaked and they're heartbreaking. One line read, "If I have gone home to glory and they say I was at peace, let them know peace don't come from silence. I missed y'all. I waited. I forgave. But I was lonely." Let that sink in. Mosie Burks, who sang for years about joy, faith, and the goodness of the Lord, spent her last moments not yearning for fame or healing, but simply waiting. Waiting for a knock at the door, a call, a visit, a friend, and perhaps most painful of all, several high-profile gospel figures, people who once stood on stage with her, who praised her, who honored her during award shows, never showed up. Not even once. No visit. No call. Their names, though not spoken publicly, are being quietly passed around in private gospel circles, and to this day, none have issued a public response. Some fans are calling it the betrayal of a legend. Others say it's a harsh reflection of the gospel industry's truth, celebrated when relevant, discarded when aging or sick. But maybe the most crushing part of Mosey's final message came in this line: "They will cry loud for me in public, but I cried for them in private. I only wish they knew." Just imagine that. A woman who gave her soul her entire life to the church and to gospel music, left silently pleading for anyone to show they still cared. And still, to this day, not a word from some of the biggest names in gospel. Where was the unity we preach about? Where was the community we proclaim so loudly from the pulpits? In that same leaked letter, Mosey reportedly mentioned Tamela Mann by name, writing, "Tell Tamela I heard her song when the nurse played it, 'Take Me to the King.' That's exactly what I asked him to do." At one note hit Tamela like a freight train. In a tearful follow-up post on Instagram, Tamela wrote, "I just wish I could have had one more moment with her. I would have sung not for a show, but just to bring her comfort." Meanwhile, both gospel fans and insiders online began calling out big names in the industry, pressuring them to respond. Some chose to remain oddly silent. Others posted vague, rest in peace messages, still avoiding any mention of the deep pain Mosey expressed before her passing. But this conversation is no longer just about Mosey. It's become a mirror for the gospel world at large. As the dust settled in the days after Mama Mosie Burks' death, a storm was slowly gathering, not in the headlines, but inside the church pews, in the choir lofts, and behind the stained glass windows of gospel's most sacred institutions. Whispers turned into tension. That tension grew into outrage. The gospel community, long celebrated for its strength, sound, and unity, was now exposing a deeper fracture of the spirit. That fracture had a name: abandonment. For decades, legends like Mosie Burks helped build the foundation of gospel music, filling venues, touching souls, and shaping the very essence of the genre. But what happens when those legends age? When they no longer tour, sing live, or post trending videos? Quietly, methodically, they're forgotten. Sources connected to both the Mississippi Mass Choir and independent gospel artists revealed that internal disagreements have been brewing for some time over how to honor aging pioneers like Mosey. Some pushed for retirement and care funds. Others argued the focus should be on fresh, marketable talent. Sadly, the latter viewpoint often prevailed. That's exactly what Tamela Mann called out in her powerful and heart-wrenching plea during a live-streamed gospel event when she finally addressed the elephant in the sanctuary. "We can't keep preaching love and leaving our elders behind. That ain't God, that's business. And gospel was never supposed to be business first." Her voice cracked with emotion. The room fell silent. It wasn't a performance. It was a cry from her soul. Not everyone received Tamela's words with open arms. Multiple gospel insiders, including major promoters and even senior pastors, were reportedly unsettled. Some felt she was airing church matters in public. One even remarked, "This ain't TMZ. This is church. We don't do scandal here." But fans watching from home saw the irony loud and clear. They knew the real scandal wasn't what Tamela said, it was the silence. And Tamela wasn't standing alone for long. Soon after her tearful message, a wave of support from younger gospel artists began to rise. Names like Corn Hawthorne, Jonathan McReynolds, and Leandria Johnson echoed her call. They proposed the formation of a Gospel Legacy Council, a body dedicated to supporting aging gospel legends spiritually, emotionally, and financially. They called for consistent wellness check-ins for retired choir members and vocalists. They envisioned mentorship programs, pairing gospel veterans like Mosey with the younger generation, ensuring these legends are never left to feel invisible again. But even as support continued to grow, the divide was still very real. A retired gospel musician who had worked with Mosey back in the 90s put it plainly: "There are folks who built entire careers on Mosey's fire, but once her flame started to dim, they moved on like she was never part of their story." That single quote caused waves across social media, and the comments came pouring in. "This is a gospel tragedy. We need to do better. The church failed her. Why do we wait until they die to show we cared?" It's a question Tamela herself raised in a recent interview. "I don't want to go to another funeral bringing flowers too late. The time to love is now. The time to see our legends is now while they still remember our names." Tamela is now spearheading what she's calling the Remembered Summit, a planned live celebration to honor gospel legends while they're still here, to give them their flowers in real time and make sure no one else ends up like Mosey. And here's the most powerful part: while Mama Mosie's earthly journey may have ended, her legacy might be the very thing that saves another gospel great from suffering the same fate. Though Mama Mosie Burks was laid to rest, her story hasn't ended. In fact, her silence in those final moments is now speaking louder than ever, reverberating through sanctuaries, gospel live streams, and every soul touched by her voice. Her story is forcing fans, leaders, and even skeptics to take a hard look at how we treat gospel legends, not just after they pass, but while they're still living. It's a hard truth to accept that someone who gave so much joy, who inspired so many, could have suffered in isolation. But sometimes the strongest legacies are shaped through pain. And Mosie Burks, whether she intended to or not, ignited a reckoning the gospel world needed badly. Since Tamela Mann's emotional call to action, things have started to shift in the gospel space. Artists are launching gospel family check-in programs, calling or visiting retired gospel pioneers at least once a month. Churches are beginning to install legacy walls, celebrating elder gospel members while they're still here to see it. Tamela and David Mann also just launched an independent fund called Mosey's Table, devoted to providing meals, medical support, and emotional care for aging gospel legends who've been forgotten by the very industry they helped build. And this isn't about pity, it's about healing. Healing a deep and dangerous disconnect, because for far too long, gospel music has lived in a paradox, preaching unity and love while letting some of its most loyal voices fade away in silence. Mosey's life and her passing put that mirror right back in front of the community. But what would Mosie say about all of this? One of her longtime choir members offered a reflection at her memorial. Mosie wouldn't want us to cry for long. She'd want us to sing louder, live better. But she'd also want us to do better. For the next Mosie, for the ones who are still here. And that's the part that stings the most, because right now there are dozens of Mosies out there. Aging gospel singers, musicians, choir members living in quiet shadows, slowly being erased while the world continues to celebrate their past, but not their present. And unless we change something now, that painful cycle will only repeat. That's why this story matters. That's why you're watching right now, because this isn't just a story about death. It's about the love we show while people are still alive. So let this be the turning point. Let Mosie's name echo not just through playlists and memorials, but in our actions. Let every rest in peace post be followed by a "How are you doing today?" message to someone who may be feeling forgotten. And to Mama Mosie, thank you. You sang like an angel, you served with your whole heart, and you left this world like a prophet. Your final silence made the world speak. And now we promise we will not forget. If this story moved your heart, don't scroll away. Like this video to honor Mama Mosie's life. Comment below with your favorite memory or song from Mosie Burks. Let's create a wall of remembrance together. Share this with someone in the gospel world who needs to hear it. And most importantly, subscribe for more untold truths and stories the industry won't always reveal. Because it's time we give our legends their flowers while they're still here to smell them.